All right, let's dive into one of the most powerful chapters in the entire Bible. You might have heard it called the Hall of Faith. It's this incredible gallery, right, full of lives just defined by trust and perseverance. But it all kicks off with a really basic question. A question about a word we throw around all the time, but maybe don't really get.
I mean, think about it. How many times have you heard someone say, just have faith, or you gotta keep the faith? We say it all the time. But for so many of us, that whole idea can feel, well, kind of vague, right? It's easy to say, sure, but what does it actually mean to live it? That's a lot harder to pin down.
So what is it then? Is it just wishful thinking? Crossing your fingers and hoping for the best? Or maybe a blind leap into the dark? Well, those are really common ways people think about it. But the text we're digging into today, it paints a completely different picture. It tells us faith isn't some flimsy hope. It's something incredibly solid.
Okay, so let's get right into the text. The very first verse of Hebrews 11 gives us this amazing definition. Listen to the words it uses: assurance, conviction. I mean, those aren't words about guessing or being unsure, are they? They scream confidence. They even suggest certainty. So right away, this is reframing faith. It's not just about what we hope might happen, it's about what we know is going to happen, even if we can't see it with our own eyes yet.
And the rest of the chapter? It's not just some deep philosophical debate. It's a gallery, a hall of faith, literally filled with these portraits of real people whose entire lives were shaped by this definition. Their stories are what bring this idea down to earth and show us what faith really looks like when it's put into action.
Okay, so to really get this, we've got to break down that first verse. Let's start with that first big word, assurance, or you might see it translated as substance.
Now the key here is the original Greek word, which is hypostasis. And this isn't talking about some fuzzy feeling, no way. It means a firm foundation and actual reality. In fact, a really great way to think about it is like a title deed. Now, what's a title deed? It's a legal document that proves you own a house, right? Even if you're on the other side of the world, that deed proves it's yours. Well, this text is saying that faith is the title deed to what God has promised. It's like you already have possession of it right now in your heart, way before you can actually hold it in your hands. That's a game changer.
So, you see, this kind of substantial title deed faith, it's not just a nice bonus. The text is super clear here. It's absolutely essential. It says it's impossible to please God without it. And it breaks down into two parts. First, you've got to believe that He exists. And second, you've got to believe that He's good, that He actually rewards those who are genuinely looking for Him. It's a faith that's totally based on who God is.
So with that definition set, the author of Hebrews just jumps right in to show us what this looks like in real life. And he goes way back, all the way to the very beginning of the story, with the first people to ever put this kind of faith into action.
First up, we meet Abel. His faith showed up in the quality of what he offered. See, it wasn't just some empty ritual. It was a real act of trust, believing that what he was giving actually mattered. And then there's Enoch. His faith was so deep, his relationship with God was so close that the text says he just disappeared. He was taken from this life. His whole life was about pleasing God through faith.
And this gets at a really critical point. There's a huge difference between just passively believing something is true and having an active faith that makes you actually do something. Here's an analogy. It's one thing to believe intellectually that a parachute will save you. It's a whole other thing to strap it on and jump out of the plane. That jump, that's active faith. The book of James says it perfectly. Faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Real biblical faith is a trust so deep it always leads to action. And this idea just keeps building as we go through the chapter. We start to meet people whose faith was tested not just in one single moment, but over their entire lives. These are people who had to act on God's promises without ever getting to see the final blueprint.
And the author creates this amazing rhythm, right? He keeps repeating this phrase, by faith. You see it over and over. By faith, Noah, who was warned about a flood in a world that had probably never even seen rain, spent decades building a giant ark. By faith, Abraham packed up and left a stable, comfortable life to go to a place he'd never seen, not even knowing where he was ultimately going. And by faith, Sarah, who was way past the age of having kids, believed God's promise against all biological odds and had a son. You see the pattern? In every single case, their faith was trust in action. It was about stepping into the complete unknown, based on nothing but God's word.
But here's the really stunning part. For a lot of these heroes, the big promise wasn't fulfilled while they were alive.
They died still holding on to that title deed, looking toward a future they would never actually see on this earth. And that tells us something so profound about faith. It's about trusting God's timeline, not just ours. It's about believing that He's preparing something way, way better in the long run.
Then the chapter really zooms in, dedicating a big chunk of time to one man, a man whose faith put him on a collision course with the most powerful empire on the planet. And this is where we see faith as an act of just incredible courage.
I mean, just look at the choices Moses made, all because of his faith. It started with his parents, who defied the king's insane order because they feared God more than they feared Pharaoh. Then Moses himself, a guy raised with every luxury you can imagine, he refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He turned his back on all that power and privilege. Instead, he chose to be mistreated alongside his own people rather than enjoy the temporary pleasures of sin in the palace. Why would anyone do that? Because he saw something others couldn't see. He saw an invisible king and a reward that was going to last. Faith completely flipped his value system upside down and gave him the guts to live by it.
Now, if the story stopped right there, you might think, okay, so faith is just a formula for success. But that's not the whole picture. The author of Hebrews takes this sudden, almost jarring turn to show us the full, complicated truth about a life of faith. It's a life that has both these incredible, breathtaking victories and, at the same time, unimaginable suffering.
First, let's look at the triumphs. The author just unloads this rapid-fire list of amazing things that happened because of faith. People conquered kingdoms, they brought about justice, they shut the mouths of lions, they quenched the fury of actual fire, weakness was turned into unbelievable strength, they became powerful in battle. It's just this powerful, inspiring highlight reel of what faith can do.
But then, in the very next sentence, the tone completely shifts. The list keeps going, but now it's a list of suffering. Others, also by faith, were tortured and refused to be set free. They faced mocking and brutal whippings. They were put in chains and thrown in prison. They were stoned. They were sawn in two. They were killed by the sword. They had to live like fugitives, homeless, persecuted, and just horribly mistreated.
And this might be the most challenging, but also the most important part of the whole chapter. See, faith isn't some magic shield that protects you from hardship. Sometimes faith leads you straight into it. But the value of these lives wasn't measured by how comfortable they were. It was measured by their faithfulness. And the conclusion the text reaches is just stunning. It says, the world was not worthy of them. Their faith gave them a kind of eternal significance that their earthly situation just couldn't touch.
So, after walking us through this incredible gallery, this hall of faith, with all its amazing highs and terrible lows, the author brings it all home. He connects their stories directly to you and me, right here, right now.
See, these aren't just dusty old figures from a history book. Their lives come together to form what the author calls a great cloud of witnesses. And that word for witness in the original Greek, it's martes. It doesn't just mean someone watching from the stands, it means someone who gives a testimony. Their whole lives are a testimony to the fact that God is faithful. It's like they're a massive crowd in a stadium, all around us, and their story is screaming, it's possible, He is faithful, don't you dare give up.
And that is the call to action. Because we have their testimony, because we're surrounded by this incredible example, we're called to run our race, to get rid of everything that holds us back, and to run with perseverance the race that's been marked out just for us. Their story becomes our encouragement. Their faith becomes our fuel. And so we're left with this final, really powerful question. The Hall of Faith, it's not a closed-off museum. It's an ongoing story. They ran their part of the race. Their stories are now written down. But now, the baton is in our hands. So what will your story say? What will the story of our faith be? What are we going to do with that title deed we've been given? That right there is the timeless challenge of Hebrews 11.